So we have a massive problem that's going on inside of our country right now. If you are someone that cares about any kind of government program, whether this is unemployment, social security, even stimulus technically, there's no plans for stimulus, but if they were ideally to do some kind of stimulus check, but anything in that particular world, the stock market, our general economy, all of that stuff in this world, then today's video is going to be relatively important. Because the big idea is that there is a situation right now where the US is in massive danger of defaulting on its debt. Long story short, all you have to know about how this works is that basically the US, they run off of a lot of debt, and soon it's expected that they may not be able to pay off that debt, and so there's a lot of stuff to cover. So in today's video, what I really want to talk about is basically everything related to the debt ceiling. I want to explain what that exactly is. It is different than a government shutdown, so not to be confused with that. We're going to talk about the difference between a debt ceiling, the debt ceiling crisis, and then a potential government shutdown, which is two totally separate things, and a little bit of everything, and then just giving a big background story to what's happening right now. So with that being said, let's just get this video rolling. But as always, real fast, if you guys enjoy videos like this, remember to smash the like button, comment, feel free to leave any kind of comment if you guys want to, subscribe, hit the bell for similar videos like this, and let's get this video started. So the situation, as just mentioned, is that they're currently working on the debt ceiling crisis situation. We're going to start by explaining a little bit about what this is, but the big idea is that the deadline that they have to try to approve and handle this debt ceiling situation is actually technically by whenever they run out of money. But they're hoping to try to do it by Sunday, and that's the typical goal right now at this current time. Now, even if you're watching this into the future, because we are going to be explaining what the debt crisis situation is, I still think it's relatively important to know, because this happens to be a situation that happens about once every single year, so you guys can prepare for next time when it happens, likely next year, assuming that they survive this particular year first, of course, because we still have to deal with what's going on right now in our present moment. But the debt ceiling / crisis situation pretty much just refers to a period of time when our country pretty much runs out of money. The big idea is that the debt ceiling, which is also called the debt limit, because this is, again, the debt ceiling / the limit to how much money, the cap to how much money they can spend, really just refers to the amount of money that our country can borrow by selling treasury bonds to raise up money for government spending. In financially difficult and historical times, this tends to increase. The most prominent and perfect example is during wartime. During wartime, the government needs obviously a lot more money to be able to fund their military, to fund services, foreign affairs, all that stuff. That's when it's really, really important. Now, this is a very, very massive difference from a government shutdown, because a government shutdown is different in that when it comes to a government shutdown, that's actually a lot more about having the rights to physically spend the money. In other words, the debt ceiling crisis refers to how much debt the country can even physically take on, whereas the government shutdown refers to Congress's ability to approve money to actually be spent, including the money that they actually have on hand by the end of the year, the fiscal year, which is specifically happens every single year around September 30th. So as a result, the debt ceiling is actually an even worse situation, because it means that all programs will potentially shut down if they don't plan to manage to, or if they don't manage to approve the spending, as opposed to a government shutdown where it's really only certain programs and areas that's going to potentially be impacted. Now, the current problem, what's going on is that there's just a massive political divide, not necessarily about raising the debt ceiling per se, but also about a lot of other policies and programs about how they want to approve the debt ceiling. So in other words, what's going on right now, or how they want to approve raising the debt ceiling. In other words, how this is going on is that this is your traditional Democrats versus Republicans conflict and situation. Essentially, it's that the Democrats, they want to raise the debt ceiling. The Republicans, some of them are kind of hesitant about it because they don't want to take on too much debt, but they're also trying to see if they can approve other policies within it so that they get it as a bundled package. In other words, they're trying to use this kind of against each other to try to get their own agenda through, and that's really the story behind it. There's also a lot of debates about potentially trying to change the physical system of how the debt ceiling actually works inside of our country. In other words, there are some people trying to potentially even get rid of the debt ceiling, and then there's there's some people that are trying to just make it so that it's much more niche, in the sense that basically how it works is that they're going to be raising the debt ceiling for certain sectors, but also raising it so that other sectors and industries or other ways of spending their money isn't particularly impacted by this current situation. Because this is related to debt, super similar to how we have a credit score, they also technically have a credit rating to how well they can pay off their debt that they have to maintain as well. Now, the story is that if they don't manage to raise this debt ceiling, then this is going to be a massive problem inside of our country, because it means that so much of the things that are tied onto our government are going to be impacted. Again, this is going to be even worse in a government shutdown, because in a government shutdown, the government shuts down, but there are a lot of other programs that can at least still run because they actually still have money. But in a debt ceiling crisis situation that we're talking about now, it means that the government is going to actually physically run out of money. There's going to be no more money to physically flow and go around. And so if that particularly situation ends up happening, it means that not only are all government programs going to end potentially or certainly be cut short, things such as like unemployment, social security, other kinds of funding, food stamps, SNAP benefits, EBT, all that kind of stuff going on, to even just, the actual, obviously the paychecks of our governors will be impacted. But again, it's not just that, but it's also going to be a lot of other issues as well. The stock market, the overall health of the economy, the actual credit score, because it also means that as a foreign power, we already made a lot of videos talking about how the US, currency is on the brink of collapse. There's videos that we made that already talks about it, so I highly recommend checking that out at the end screen. I'll put it at the end. It talks about the end of the US dollar. But if this situation was to go on, if this debt crisis situation was to go on, it's definitely not going to help the situation in any way, shape, or form as well. So that is the big reason why they really, really have to try to work on this as best as they possibly can. And again, the deadline, technically there is no specific date. It really goes on until they run out of money. But the goal is that they want to do it by Sunday. But it's important to at least understand what this is even is, so we can kind of get a big picture of the problem right now at hand. Now, in terms of what is the solution in the story to what's going on right now is that pretty much President Biden is meeting with Kevin McCarthy in order to try to discuss plans to raise up the debt ceiling in order to take on more debt so that they can continue running. They've technically already raised the debt ceiling many, probably over 70, maybe even 80 times in just the history of the United States of America. So this is definitely something that's reoccurring. But the biggest difference is that right now they're just going through a lot more conflict, particularly more so than usual, about how they want to approach the situation. Some people inside of Congress just want to approve the debt ceiling and just raise it up and then just continue on. Other people think that they're taking on way too much debt and they don't want to necessarily approve it right now at this time. And then there's a lot of other people that want to approve and raise up the debt ceiling, but they also want to get a lot of other programs and policies inside of there to approve it as a whole package. And so they're using this against the people inside of Congress or their enemies in Congress, because again, it just depends on what side you're currently on. They're using against their enemies in order to try to get what they currently want, so that as many people as they possibly can, or that their particular side is as happy as they possibly can be. But that's really the story to what's happening right now. Now, when is it expected that they're going to actually run out of money? Again, going back is that there's no specific date, but the prediction right now is that it's going to run out by right around June 2023. So basically about a month from now, if they end up not approving anything. But of course, what they actually end up approving, we just have to see what they end up ultimately saying. But I think that's probably the biggest picture and takeaway to really take away from this particular video. But there's obviously so much to cover, because the reasoning wise is that a lot of things are going to be impacted as well. Again, keep in mind is that whether you're on government benefits, obviously we talked about how that's going to be impacted, but even for regular people like investors in the stock market, it's going to lead to a lot of negative sentiment inside of the stock market if our country does not do well. Things related to foreign affairs is going to be impacted. We mentioned a little bit about the US dollar, collapse. It's technically a separate issue, but it is one of those things that they do kind of tie somewhat related together if this was to go through, because it's going to lead to a lot of negative sentiment to what's happening right now inside of our country. So the big timeline is that we're gonna have to wait till Sunday if you were watching this right around release date first in order to see whether or not they're able to approve it by then. If they end up not approving it by then, the very likely probability is that they're just going to end up moving their deadline again until the absolute true deadline, which is basically when they run out of money, as just mentioned. We hope we don't have to go that far, but of course what ends up happening we're gonna have to see in one of the future episodes of the Kevin Show and also the news in general, because obviously the news and is gonna be the best tracker of what's actually physically going on. But of course that's pretty much what I really wanted to cover in today's video. So if you guys made it to the end, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave a comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Remember to smash the like button if you guys hopefully enjoyed that, or leave a comment for suggestions if anything, because we're always looking for rooms to improve. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, stay hopefully, financially okay and secure, because we're going through difficult times, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.